Hello, welcome to another infrequent episode of PD Howler Basics, and today we're going to show how to do a bump map or height map and texture map, as well as erosion maps, and how to combine them in order to do 3D landscaping in PuppyRay. I'm just going to use a very small piece here. It's a 1024 by 790. It's the default, basically, and that's really all we need because PuppyRay is infinitely tiling. So we want to make sure that as we're making these various textures that we keep them seamless, and then that way as we move around inside of PuppyRay, we won't be seeing any things. I might break this up into 2 videos, might be just 1 video, not sure yet. We'll see how that goes. Alright then, so the first thing, we start with our blank screen. We're going to go up to filter, and there are a number of ways to do this, but this is sort of a quick and easy way to do it. And then noise, or render, plasma noise. We click this little button right here, which is seamless. I'll move this out of the way so we can take a look. 6, 7, 8, somewhere in there. Any of those is fine. 5 is too small. When you're dealing with a height map, anything that's lighter or whiter is taller. Anything that's darker or blacker is shorter. It won't go below 0, so there's not a negative value. But it will go down to 0. So pure black is pure 0. I like to start with about a 7 and kind of take a look at what we're seeing, here. Here we've got what's going to look like a fairly tall mountain, and then it's going to slope down around to some darker areas. I think that's a pretty good start. So I'm going to say OK. Next, I go back here to the filter and render again on plasma noise, again seamless. This time I'm going to take it up to about 8 or 9, and I'm going to change this mode here from opaque to difference. What that's going to do is it's going to find places between the original render and this render where it's going to be really dark. These make wonderful rivers, lakes, things of that nature. So now this ridge that we have here really sticks out. We're still in seamless, so this will transfer right on over to there, from top to bottom. So as we're tiling this around in PuppyRay, we'll find that it just kind of goes on forever, sort of like, deep diving into a fractal. I like this pretty well. You can, every time that you tap it, you're going to get something different. So be really careful with that. If you find one that you really like, you might want to, that's right, you can't save while you're in this. If you find one you really like, I would just say OK, and then you could always undo and go back again after you've stored one. Otherwise, you can't go just backwards and undo and it go back to this, because this is randomly generating every single time that you make a change. So I'm going to go with this one. I'm going to save the copy right up here is the shortcut for it, store image. You can also go to image and then clipboard, copy it there, and you can also go store image copy. So there's a number of different ways to do it, but the fast way is right there, store image. So now I have my base image. I need to do my erosion map, and I need to do my texture map. So for the texture map, we'll do it next. We go to filter, we come down to stylize, and then we're going to go slope shading. So this brings up an auto-generated slope map, which is following along the same map that we have here. If you don't want your grass to be your lowest level, then you can change that color, you can change your rock color, and you can change your snow color. This is just a sort of a general idea. In order to make snow show up, you just drag this down, and as you can see, the snow starts to appear on where the highest areas would be. And then the grass, the same thing. If you want it to go higher up the mountains or even completely green, you know, you can go that direction. Now say I wanted to have water down here, I just click on the grass. I can change it to a nice watery light color. Like say I wanted, you know, Caribbean things, I might want to go even into the sand, or maybe even the light sand colors here. This will be whatever is in your lowest area, and start kind of crawling up the sides of the hills and things. So let's go with the blue here for that. Say OK. So now we see it has changed all of these things to that sandiness, so I can decide, you know, how much of that I want to be on the riverbeds or waterbeds. And if you're not going to have water in your image, then, you know, grass is going to be one of your best choices. Unless it's rock. I guess you could do red rock, things like that for a desert. So now I have my sand for my little beaches and things selected. And I want, instead of snow over here, I want this to be the part that has most of the green, and something fairly dark and tropical. We're going to bring that down so that it starts showing up in lots of places. And then for my rock, instead of the gray, I'd like to go for a little bit more red-orange color here. Again, fairly dark. So I like that. Another thing you can do is turn on shading, and that's going to give you some variations in shading that are following a little bit more along with your original height map. You can go into the Sobel contours over here. That's advanced, and there's a few other things that you can do along there. Intensities, samples, but right now this is a basic tutorial, so we're gonna just leave it with that. So now I have my texture here. I'm also going to save a copy of it, and we're going to use the swap, which is right here, to put that over here in your swap image. If you don't have the swap image turned on here, then you just click that little button and it shows your swap. You can also choose different sizes of thumbnails from there. So here I have my new texture, which I have saved. And here I have my blank spot. I click on that, and that refills that back into my texture spot, ready to go. So I'd like to have some erosion to show on this, because especially if it is here by rivers and oceans, it's going to have more rain, and therefore it's going to have more erosion. So we come back up to filters and stylize, and we come down to erosion. The erosion map starts with about 20 inches per year of rainfall, and long run lengths coming down. Flatness threshold is about 2, and viscosity is 5. This is an okay map. If you want more erosion, you would up that. If you would want, you know, shorter runs, all of these are changeable, but it makes a pretty decent erosion map just as is. And so for simplicity's sakes, we're going to just say okay. Once again, we store that image. We're going to add a layer right here with this plus button. So now we've got another layer here, and we're going to put our, do the swap, and we're going to put our texture back in here. Now we don't want the all of our texture to just go away, so we're going to drop it down so that now it's the base. We're going to go back up here to our erosion. See, there's our erosion layer, you can see. And we're going to change the mode to subtractive. So now it's just subtracting things out. We're getting some little gullies and things that are following along, and that adds some nice erosion to it. This is a little bit dark, so we're going to go ahead and just reduce the opacity of this particular layer down quite a bit till you find something that, you know, makes you happy. You can also use this erosion layer on your base bump map, but in general, you got to be really careful with that. You're going to get serious jaggedies because it's so much black and white, and that is what the height map is based on, is your black and white. And since they are very thin lines, you're going to have a lot of problems with that. So for this basic thing, better to put it on the texture and nothing else. And now we're ready to collapse this together using this button right there. It'll ask us if we want to do that, and we say yes. Once again, we save a copy. So now we have our texture that doesn't have the erosion on it. We have our texture that does have the erosion. We have our original bump map. So with the original bump map selected again, we're going to go to Image, and we're going to expand Dynamic Range. This is going to give us, more height and more depth into it. If this was a little more noisy, then I might actually run a blur on it to help to reduce that down a little bit. We're going to again save this so that we can come back to it in case that we'd want to make some more changes. We've got it right there stored. We'll do a swap back up here with that S again, and we're going to select our new texture that has the erosion map on it, and then we swap back. We want our height map here in the main buffer, which you can tell it's the main buffer right there. It says main. And we want our texture map in the swap buffer, which if we swap this, you'll see it says swap. Consider the swap buffer kind of like the backside of a piece of paper or 2 layers of paper. So now we have our bump map in place, our height map, and we have our texture map, and we're ready to go into PuppyRay. So we go to Filter, Transform, and PuppyRay. It comes up with a default look to it. It's also in preview quality. Depending on your computer, you might be able to pop it up higher than that. Since I'm also recording at the same time, we'll go with medium quality right now, and then we'll switch to higher quality when we get more done. So this is some of your basic controls. This will move your camera with the left mouse button. Once this is selected, you can click on this screen, not that screen. So click on this screen and hold, and up or back and forth brings it closer to you and further away. With the left mouse button and left mouse button, side to side. This is, you're in the view of the camera and it's moving things around. You can also, with the right mouse button, if you go up, it will bring you closer to the land, and if you go down, it will bring you up above. The side to side doesn't really do anything. It's kind of the same as the up and down. It's just slower. So if you want to more slowly move down, then you might, use the side to side to just do fine tuning adjustments. But otherwise, that's your up and down. It's very similar here with the rotation of the camera. Again, left mouse button, dragging it towards you brings it up, pushing it away from you brings it down, and side to side. So there you can see our sun and our sky. If you use the right mouse button, please do so with care, because you're going to tilt your world, and that can look very odd with your water running off the screen. So in general, for most cases, you're just going to want to use your left mouse button. The next one over is your light. This moves with the left mouse button, moves your light side to side. You can see the sun moving, but you can also see the shadows changing there on the ground. Up and down will move it up and down, but also moves faster up and down with the right mouse button. And again, with the right mouse button, side to side is still mostly just up and down. So that's kind of how you can control your light a little bit better. This one, the next one over, actually moves the world. The only time this is really useful is for changing your water levels. So if you want more of your mountain to stick out, you use the right mouse button and push away from you, and your mountains get out, your water gets lower. And if you use the right mouse button and pull it towards you, your water gets deeper, your land is sinking in. Your land is basically at the 0 level, so if you're wanting things to be below ground level, quote unquote, then you have to go below the water level. Remember I'd said earlier that there was no negative, that black was at 0, so that's where that puts that. Then, and the left mouse button just moves the world around, kind of like the camera, but it's actually moving the whole world. And as you've seen here, because we used a seamless texture, you can just go however far you want. Here we're getting closer to the sun, so you're getting the blown out lights. Here we're getting further away from the sun, so it kind of deeper shadows, more shadows. And now we'll get us some water back. We're still pretty close to the sun because we moved the world. So again, generally, use your right mouse button for just adjusting the water levels. This one here will scale your world. You go towards, your mountains get higher. You pull towards you, mountains get lower to flat. And if you use, if you go side to side, again, it does the same thing but slowly. If you use the right mouse button, going side to side, you're going to shrink things in. Notice how this is getting thinner and thinner. And then right mouse button going the other direction, it's getting wider and wider. So you can change the scale very easily. And then with the right mouse button going away from you, we'll start making your other axes thinner, and coming towards you. Well, opposite direction. Coming towards you will make them thinner, and going away from you will make them wider. So that's how you would change your X and Y scaling. You don't want to do too much of that unless you started with a very flat height map to begin with, because when you get up to higher quality, you're going to have a lot of jaggedies in here from pixelation. So your best bet is to generally leave your height and width about the same as, well, you can change your height up and down, but leave your width, X and Y axes about the same as you're working. This is your zoom camera, and basically as you push it away from you, you get more zoom, and as you bring it in close, less zoom. So it acts just like a zoom camera. So you can get some crazy zoom going there. Personally, I rarely use the zoom camera, and I rarely use the scaling, maybe just a little bit up and down. I'll use the world for changing my water around, and most of the time I'm working with my cameras and my lights. This changes the intensity of the light. Default's usually decent, but sometimes you're going to want things darker or brighter. So you just grab a hold of that with the left mouse button, and it's a slider. You just slide it where you want it. The fog, this sets the fog at how far away that things fade out. The closer it is, the more things fade out. So if you really wanted to, do a heroic mountain or something, then you might want to bring the fog in closer. And the further out you go, the more repetitions that you can see going out there. Global illumination is your shadows, how much light is bouncing off. Let's bring this up to high quality so you can see a little better. So how much you can see inside the shadows. The lower it goes, the more silhouette you get, the less you can see. And of course, the higher you go, it can really white things out, blow things out too far. But it can be useful, and depending on what you're doing. Pre-filter basically works on your landscape. and that allows, as you bring that up, it starts eroding. It only goes from 0 to 1. That will erode the texture of your mountains, smooth them out. It can be used in small amounts to a really good effect if you've got too many jags or too much pixelation. And then your sun, whether or not it's visible, you can just click that. Anytime if something doesn't seem to be changing, you just click render and it will make your changes for you. So there's visible sun and no sun. As you notice, it doesn't change the light that's going here. It's just whether or not you see the sun in your picture. So we'll bring our sun back in. This is skies. This gives you a number of different skies you can use. Night sky, a sunset. Again, hit render if something doesn't change for you. Sunset with a giant sun there. Nice summery morning. Brighter day. So you can change these. You can also, as it says down here, no custom brush or use custom brush. If you had a custom brush, say you used the sky renderer first and made a render with that, saved that as a custom brush, you could then choose that as your sky. You could also use any kind of custom brush, whatever you put into the custom brush, and you can use that as your sky, so you could have words across the sky or things like that. It will deform it because this is a sphere, so you do have to keep that in mind when you're making the alternate brushes and things. So as you can see here, when you get up to the top of the dome, it becomes just a circle there. So now we're moving back up here. You can see our sand and rock. So our red rock there on the mountains, and then the sand is down below here where our water is. So a lot of things you can do with that. So now we're going to open up the More tab. Here inside the More, we can change how big the sun is. So we can make our sun a size 80. I just typed that number in, so much bigger, or we could make it, you know, teeny tiny. It has a little bit of effect on the lighting, but not really much. It's, again, mostly meant to show that. Your actual lighting control is your intensity. You'll get this blue color if you go down to intensity 0. So as long as you have a little bit of intensity, you'll have that color of light. And of course the light itself, I should have mentioned before, you just change the color with this. So if you wanted to have green light, all the light that's being cast now across here is green. That of course also darkens up what you're seeing here. And as you notice, as I'm bringing that light up, it's casting more and more of that light here on the mountains, turning everything somewhat green. So you could, not even have a texture and still get some color within, especially if you're doing something like a desert scene where you didn't really need that much variegation. And the same thing with your fog. You could change the color of your fog if you wanted something really strange and creepy. So that's all adjusted through those. So let's go back to something that's generally a little bit more normal. Alright, so there was our sun size. Ground fog, this is an on-off button. At this distance we're not going to notice it too much. The larger the number, the shorter the fog. Something that I just found out over time. So here the fog is going to be about halfway up the mountains at 15. And if we were to go up to like 50, then it would be right along the water's edge. Let's move in a little bit closer here. So here's the ground fog. We've rendered it. You can see it here along the edges, and it's going to be whatever color that you have chosen here for the fog. So it's going to go along with that. Here's where if we type in 50 and then render, as you can see now it's just right along the edges. You could use that effect to make it look a little bit more like water washing up against the edges, or sand, or things like that. Specularity and Hardness changes how the light is hitting against reflective surfaces. You just kind of play around with those. The basic settings are basically okay. So right now is our water plane. It's set to value noise. If we don't want any water at all, we can just change to none. And now we have our dry sandy washes and things without having to raise or lower the water up at all. You can also do a purlin noise for the water, which has a little bit more variation and variegation to it. And there's the value noise again. Not a lot of difference under that. Your frequency, if you hover over these things, it will tell you a smaller value is a larger wave. So right now we've got pretty simple small waves going. If I was to change this, type in 2 zeros here and hit render, we've got almost still water. So if you're looking for more of a still look to the water, you just go with more zeros in the point there. And then wave speed will be how fast the little waves are moving. Your wave height is very useful with caustics and scattering. So if you're wanting to see the waves against the beach or waves against the cliffs and things like that, that's where you're going to up your wave height in order to do that. This also affects the water, your breakers, refraction, and then multi-frequency. If you do multi-frequency and you watch the water, it chops it up a lot more because it renders it multiple times. Refraction versus the reflection. This is refraction, you're seeing down into the water, and without it, we're now reflecting the sky. So if you wanted a sunset sky and the sun's at a low angle, then you might want to change it over to refraction or reflection so that you get those reflections. This also lets you see to adjust your water a lot of times easier than when it has that refraction in it and you're seeing down low. Sometimes it gets really hard to tell the difference between where the land is and where the water is. So there's that. And then attenuation. Pretty much everything, if you'll hover over it, will have a pop-up that will tell you about it. So this is the way the spectrum's attenuated underwater. This is a pretty normal amount. This only matters if you have the refraction on. So this will change the way that the light interacts with the water. Then scattering and caustics. So the caustics here at 1 and scattering 4, things are looking pretty normal. If we bump this up to about 20, and then we take our wave height and we put it at about 20, and we render that. Now we've got caustics, we have caustics everywhere that it's hitting. Technically what we're actually seeing are caustics on the bottom of the terrain where the light has gone through, but it gives that particular effect. So, why not use it? There's a little bit, less. Our scattering here, we can change the color of the scattering underneath the water and make it more or less. So if we were to do 20, as you see, we're not getting much scattering underneath the water. You can't see the rocks and things that are underneath. So it gives the effect of more milky water where the waves are stirring things up. The other thing is you can change the color. So if you wanted some, weird water, maybe even, rivers of blood, alien lands. So lots of possibilities there. Let's go back to our fairly neutral water. And we'll turn our scattering back down. And so as you see, we're seeing deeper down in, and you're getting more of the caustic effects. All right, we're down to the bump map. Right now we don't have a bump map on. And what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at this rock that's right over here, because that's going to let us see things a little bit better. And we have a variety of bump maps. Unfortunately, at this time you cannot put in your own bump map to the height map. So this is added on top of your height map that you've already generated. So we have fractal, which has fractal noise that goes over and thus adds a little bit more erosion and things. We've got rocky, so has a rocky effect and texture. Move this over a little bit. There we go. Starting to see some of the rocks. So when you're up close, you can see more of that rocky texture. We've got pitted, which can be useful on if something that's more architectural. It's got smooth areas, pitted areas, mud banks, things like that. Or on if you're doing, as I said, architectural renderings and whatnot, you can use that. Mud bank would be lots and lots of swirls in it. Riverbed is pretty much my favorite for 90% of the things. It makes a really good, really nice texture on that. You can even see little bits of rock that have fallen down. Then there's tech, which would be again more for architectural or strange alien things. Hull, again architectural, alien type things, and then purlin, a little bit rougher, organic. So let's come back here to Riverbed. You can also change the frequency. Again, the frequency, smaller value, larger bumps. And the value is how much bump that it has. You can go between 0 and 1 on this. So you just type in what it is that you want. These change your anti-alias steps and some clipping, ray steps and whatnot. Most of the time you're not going to need to bother with these. Anti-alias step goes up with each level of quality. If you're up at really high quality and you're struggling, you can also just turn it off right here until you're ready to render. And that lets you move around a little bit more. So we've got ourselves, some water here. We've got our land. We can, see the various things. Let's bring this up a little bit more, and we'll move out a little bit more, so we can see some of our white sand and whatnot as it's going here. And then when you're ready, you can turn it to final render. My keys is if you have a particular settings that you just like, I love these settings exactly the way they are, you can just save it, and then that way you can go back to those particular settings when you're ready. So now we're at our final render. This is what it's going to look like when it's done. Well, basically it is done. This is what it's going to look like. If you use the done key, it resets everything to 0. If you think you're going to want to make some more changes or see how things are going, you use the X that's up here, and that will save all of these settings that we have made so far. If you find that you have changed too many things and it's just a total mess, done again resets everything back to the basics, and then you can start making your changes again from there. All right, thanks a lot, and really appreciate it. Hope this turns out well. Bye.